Hello everybody, I'm Loki, and welcome back to the Lair. Today we're going to be talking about how to railroad without railroading. Does this subject make sense? Yes it does. It's important that when we actually play our games that we provide structure to our adventures and stories without taking away agency from our players. Whether you're running a linear or sandbox adventure, it's very rare that a dungeon master is creating content solely as a reaction to the decisions and the choices that their players make. Sometimes you, as a dungeon master, need to be able to direct the plot and the story to move the content towards a different narrative. Let's talk about how you can do that. Remember to hit the like button if you like and support the channel, and if you're new and haven't become a subscriber, consider doing so as it helps me grow the channel and produce new content. Thanks guys. I think it's very important to provide choices. I never create adventures with a procedural storyline, at least not anymore. And by that I mean a storyline where each plot point leads to the next one. What I do is when I create storylines is I have multiple choices, secondary options, which eventually lead back to a primary option on the next kind of point. I call this a dynamic storyline, and it creates the illusion of choice. Players get to choose how they develop the story, but I get to choose most, if not all, of the content, and more particularly, how the adventure ends, relatively speaking. Obviously, this style of adventure design appears to be more work at first glance, but I typically don't put much effort into plot points that are multiple choice. I put effort into the ones that are considered primary options, like this example above. These are the plot points that are more specific and do not provide multiple options. Obviously, it is worth considering that certain choices might lead to certain endings for certain types of adventures. I normally create branches that the players can follow if an adventure is quite complicated or if it's a bigger adventure, which the players can lead. If the players want to switch to another branch, they can. It's not normally easy, but it is sometimes possible. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't allow my players to do something completely different than the plot points and the plot branches available. You know, I consider myself a pretty good improviser, but I think what I'm trying to say is that content prepared is always going to be better than content that is improvised, you know? There are definitely a lot of players out there who don't like the idea of being railroaded, as the word railroad has negative connotations with restrictive gameplay, forced events and scenarios. Especially because players now have the opportunity to play vast open world video games like Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Players just want more at their D&D tables. So the big thing that we have to do sometimes is railroad the players without them realizing that they've been railroaded, because it's impossible for us to prepare everything all at the same time. I know it sounds a bit strange, but it is really D&D 101 for you newer Dungeon Masters out there. And it's not really railroading technically if the players have agreed to the story, enjoy it, and want to take part. I've noticed that a lot of Dungeon Masters who run modules are very resistant to providing homebrew content that is outside the parameters of the module that is being run. And whilst there is likely many reasons for this behaviour, one of them that I think is pretty big is that a lot of Dungeon Masters who run modules want to represent a faithful adaptation of the module that they're running. Something I've actually believed up until recently in regards to the Baramaze, which I was running for a couple of groups. At this point, I'm pretty much running mostly homebrew content for my groups outside of the Baramaze, with the prospect of them doing a condensed version of the Baramaze once they actually reach a higher level in the campaign, with hordes of undead rather than a handful. You know, it's all okay, as I've decided that I'm going to start running an official live stream every Sunday. It won't be this Sunday, it'll be next. Where I'll actually be running the Baramaze module faithfully, either with Shadow Dark or Dungeon Call Classics. I haven't really decided yet. If you're interested in being able to potentially play one of those games, all of the sign-ups are available on my public Discord server, so feel free to join if you'd like the opportunity. Following up on providing choices, having vast amounts of agency is really what running sandbox or dynamic games is all about. I always try to provide multiple adventure options to my players with the caveat that certain adventures will lead to certain rewards. I think what Sandbox means deep down is that players can choose the type of story that they want to play in. I think a cool idea is to kind of plot down different plot threads that your players can hear about. Things can be, well, examples can be things like gold coins to those who slay goblins, to the town crier ringing his bell telling the locals about a tournament taking place in the next town over. You can use these plot threads to get your players to consider what types of stories they'd like to jump into. I think when it comes down to dungeon design, and I think this is something that I haven't really covered much on my channel, but I think I'd like to in the future, I try and create dungeons with multiple routes of access that can be tackled in various ways, using secret passageways, different entrances and T-sections to split the opinion of the party is always going to give your players the agency to create a collaborative story with you that is fun and enjoyable. Obviously, there are instances where there's only one course of action that can be done to push the story forward. Example would be to lockpick the locked bronze door. It's very unlikely that the barbarian would be able to bash it down with his hammer in a timely manner, but it's not necessarily to say that there aren't other ways of dealing with the door. You know, the spell knock would probably work quite well, right? Yeah. Thanks for reaching the end of this video. This is a subject that I had a lot of interest in covering, as I think it's something that I've been learning and developing personally in my games more recently. And I figured that there might be people out there who are having difficulties running or managing their games. We're always kind of the student and the teacher when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and other TTRPGs, and I think even though I'm still learning, it's important that I kind of try and share what I'm learning with you guys, so obviously you can learn and you can teach, because the hobby is only going to kind of improve and adapt and get better if there are people out there who are actually willing to put the effort in, if I'm being honest. Anyway, as always, I'll see you guys next time on Loki's Lair. Until then.